Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. WTA Finals preview and prediction video. I cannot wait to get into this one because I'm really excited to see how these WTA Finals turn out. We have an absolutely packed top 8, and yes, one withdrawal, but generally speaking, there's going to be some fantastic tennis on show in Cancun. We've got a lot of things to dig into. Before we do, remember to that like button, do subscribe if you're new, and do leave a rating or review if you're listening on a podcast platform. So the two groups have been confirmed. We're going to talk a little bit about not just the head-to-head between each player and who I think is going to go through in each group, but also I'm going to talk about some of the external factors, so the balls they're using, conditions, and also a little bit about construction as well, which I don't know if you guys have seen it online, but it's pretty crazy what's been going on in Cancun. And it was a late decision to have it in Mexico. It looked like it might go to Saudi Arabia, but in the end fell into Cancun, which, you know, in the past has had some really positive vibes, but it looked like they were a little bit blindsided, let's say, with a decision, and maybe I didn't have a lot of time to prepare. Okay, right. Let's get into it then. So the first group is the Bacalar Group. And you can see Sabalenka, Rybakina, Pegula, Sakkari. But actually, before we get into each group and each player and the head-to-heads, I wanted to talk about the tournament. So the tournament is running for, well, I mean, it's running from the 29th of October to November 5th, and it's a round robin. So there's 4 players in 2 groups, and the top 2 players from each group will go through into semi-finals and then face off against each other, then into a final, and then ultimately we'll have a winner. Last year, Caroline Garcia beat Aryna Sabalenka, who's the current world #1, and that was a really good victory for the French player. She was actually seeded #6 last year, and Sabalenka was 7. So it's not necessarily the case that the top 1 and 2 seeds are going to go through and make the final. It is one of those events where in the past, the WTA Finals anyway, I think we had Caroline Garcia last year. We had Muguruza as well the year before. So we've actually had players who have won the tournament and not had a particularly good next year. Now, I'm not saying that there's a curse or anything, but it's just one of those things that it's been one of those unfortunate, even coincidences that players who tend to win this tournament haven't done great the year after. But I'm sure that trend won't continue, and we'll have some great tennis on show, and we won't have any of the same trends happening. Fingers crossed. In terms of the ball that they're using as well, they're using the regular duty US Open tennis ball now. That's really interesting because at the US Open this year for the women's, they actually were using the heavy duty US Open balls. That's the Wilson's US Open balls that the men use. It's the first year they used them. In the past, they were using the regular duty US Open ball, which is including that 2021 victory, by the way, that Rybakina had. For those who are unaware about the ball situation, there's been a lot being talked about on the men's and women's side. There's lots of different types of balls being used on both tours, and each ball plays a little bit differently in terms of how much felt, in terms of the weight, in terms of spin, in terms of control, in terms of heaviness, and there's been a lot of complaints by certain players. If you want actually some more information on that, worth checking out Eliza's Instagram, where she talks a little bit about that. And also Gil Gross mentioned it as well. And I might do a separate video on that. But it's been a real hot topic, I think, this year, and a lot of players have complained. But just focusing on this specific ball, this actually is a big advantage for those players who don't maybe have as much power. The regular duty US Open ball just flies a lot more. With the heavy duty, it's a heavier ball, thicker felt, and for players who've got big serves, etc., they feel like they can control it better. Whereas if you're aggressive and you have big ground strokes, sometimes, I know in the past Sabalenka has said, even Swiatek, and in the past quite far back as well, Ash Barty said that the regular duty balls they would just fly, and they struggle to control them at times. Now, they've had quite a few years playing with regular duty balls in some events, including the US Open, apart from this year, obviously. So I don't think it's going to play the biggest factor or a major factor, but it could be some at least contributing factor to some interesting results. And a player like Sakkari, for example, or even a Gauff, I would say, maybe even Jabeur, maybe Pegula. I mean, these guys are not as big a servers as, say, a Sabalenka, or bigger hitters as Sabalenka, Rybakina. You know, we're talking about Swiatek as well. I think Vondrousova, I think she'll like it. She doesn't hit a massive ball either. So, look, the players that are a little bit more underpowered, they, I think, will gain some sort of advantage, you would imagine, with these balls. But let's see. Okay, let's get into the specific groups then. So the Bacalar Group is Sabalenka, Rybakina, Pegula, Sakkari. Now, if you want to know the head-to-heads, I've got them right here, just for you guys. So Sabalenka, let's start with her first. Her head-to-head against Rybakina is 4-2 in her favor. However, the head-to-head this year is 2-1 in favor of Rybakina. So the 2 wins she has over Sabalenka came this year, and she's won one more match against the Belarusian than the Belarusians won against the Russian. However, another caveat, the Australian Open final win was Sabalenka's win over Rybakina. So that's the biggest win. I mean, one was the Indian Open final, which Rybakina came out on top. It was a tight one, to be fair, that first set. And they tend to have some really interesting matches, no doubt. So I think all in all, it's a very, very, very interesting rivalry. And it will be, in my opinion, the pick and match of this group. So, yeah, so 4-2 in favor of Sabalenka against Rybakina. Then if we talk about Pegula, she's got a 4-1 head-to-head winning record. And then against Sakkari, 6-3. So she's got positive head-to-heads against everyone in her group. So she is, in my opinion, the favorite on paper anyway. For Rybakina, she's the number 4 seed. And she, yeah, as we mentioned, has a losing head-to-head record against Sabalenka at 4-2 in favor of the Belarusian. She also has a negative head-to-head against Pegula. Pegula heads up that head-to-head 2-1 and then 1-1 against Sakkari. And that leaves us with only one head-to-head to talk about, which is Sakkari and Pegula. So Pegula is the number 5 seed, and she has a 4-5 losing or negative head-to-head against Sakkari. It's a tight one, though, but 5-4 in favor of the Greek, who is the number 8 seed, and she is filling in for the injured Karolina Muchova, who I was actually really looking forward to seeing in action. I think it's been a shame, the amount of injuries and times out she's had. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see how she gets on. I'm hoping that she gives a very strong showing at this tournament. And in all fairness to her, she normally does play very, very well in Mexico. She just tends to enjoy the conditions and the crowd, and they really do, I think, love her there in Mexico. So the second group, let's get into the second group, because I think that's something to talk about, of course, is Swiatek, Gauff, Jabeur, and Vondrousova. So it's an interesting one, right? Because we have 3 of the Grand Slam champions in this group, in Swiatek, who won Roland Garros, Gauff, who won the US Open, and Vondrousova, who won Wimbledon. Now, Jabeur's the only one that hasn't won a slam, and it'll be interesting when we talk about the head-to-heads, what you guys think of it as well. So let's start off with Swiatek, because she's, as you can imagine, has a positive head-to-head against all of the other 3 players. She is winning the head-to-head against, Coco Gauff 8-1. Against Vondrousova, it's 2-love in favor of herself. And against Ons Jabeur, it's 4-2. So, yeah, very, very positive. For Gauff, 2-love against Vondrousova and 3-2 in favor of Gauff against Jabeur. So she's got positive head-to-heads against Vondrousova and Jabeur, but of course not against Swiatek. Vondrousova has an interesting one because, as we've just mentioned, she has a losing record against Swiatek, which is to be expected, against most players do on tour. But she's also got a losing record against Gauff. Now, against Against Jabeur, she's actually got a negative. Well, I was about to say negative. She's actually got a positive head-to-head even against Jabeur. She's got a positive head-to-head against Jabeur. 4-3. Now, the reason why this is interesting, this head-to-head, is because she's won all 3 of their matches this year, including the Wimbledon final. And 2 of the matches, the other 2 matches even, have been on hardcourt. Jabeur. Well, we've just talked about hers, but she has a losing record against Swiatek, a losing record against Gauff, 3-2 in favor of the American, and 4-3 in favor of Vondrousova. So she has a losing record also against Vondrousova. Now, the head-to-heads are close, to be fair, with Ons against the others. I mean, it's either 1 or 2 wins swinging to her opponent, but she is the only player to have a losing record or losing head-to-head against everyone. She's the only player, actually, looking at it on paper, who has a losing record against everyone in her group. Even in the other group, no one had that, because Sakkari's 5-4 head-to-head against Pegula saved her there. She had a 1-1 against Rybakina as well. I mean, it's not looking good for Jabeur, honestly, on paper. And if I'm being honest, if she was in the other group, I think she would have preferred it, because her record and head-to-heads in the other group would have been better. She's going to struggle in this group because Swiatek's a tough opponent. Of course, Gauff has been great for on hard courts, and Vondrousova just seems to have a style that really, really troubles Jabeur. It really, really troubles her. So, look, I'm going to say it's going to be very, very difficult for Jabeur, in honesty. The one thing I'll say is on our outdoor hardcore and in the conditions, and the problem is we don't really know how the court's going to play, because it's a construction that's been, well, it's temporary construction, which, by the way, I can't believe that it's still, like, when they arrived, it was still under construction, which is just absolutely insane to even think about. And the players are not happy, and understandably saying that, you know, it's not really WTA Finals level to have that. Then they were only allowed 45 minutes to an hour practice on the court, so per day, and that's just crazy on the main court, that is. So yeah, I mean, they need to sort that out for next year. They can't be, you know, making announcements so late about it. But look, it's going to be a good tournament in terms of the players on show. In terms of my predictions as to who's going to get out of the groups, so for this group, as we're on the Chetumal Group, I mean, I think Swiatek and Gauff are big favourites. I know on paper they also look the favourites. The seedings say they're the favourites as well. So it's not ideal, but I just have a feeling Jabeur's carrying a little bit of an injury as well, and she has had a little niggle. I think Vondrousova is herself, and even though her style does definitely trouble Jabeur, I don't think it troubles Gauff and Swiatek as much. And yeah, I mean, that the head-to-heads against both of them would say that they've got positive head-to-heads against her. So I would go Swiatek and Gauff. I would go Swiatek and Gauff to get through the Chetumal Group. And then in terms of the Bacalar Group, Sabalenka, Rybakina, Pegula, Sakkari. I mean, I actually wouldn't be surprised if Sakkari gets through, just because, as I said, she's got nothing to lose. She's coming into it as an alternate. She'll just come into it and enjoy it. And as I said, I think the outdoor conditions, it really does depend on how the courts will play. If the courts, are they going to play fast? Are they going to play slow? I have no idea. Right? If they play slower, then you start thinking, okay, well, someone like Swiatek is going to really enjoy the courts. If they're super quick, then I think Sabalenka, Rybakina. You know, I think Gauff is versatile enough, to be fair. Same with Vondrousova, but I think she has proven maybe she's a little bit better on slightly faster courts as well. Jabeur is quite versatile as well. So, you know, there's some players who are pretty good on most surfaces, or paces anyway of surfaces. But yeah, that group's difficult. I think Sabalenka and Rybakina are the two favourites. Pegula, I think, might struggle a little bit, and I think Sakkari might as well. Even with the balls and even with how we know they can both play, I think it's going to be difficult. I do think Sabalenka will definitely get through. I'd be surprised if she doesn't. I think Rybakina, her head-to-heads are not great against the other three players. I think it could come down to her and Pegula in that match. Whoever wins that match, I think, goes through. And with Rybakina as well, sometimes it can be, does she have a little niggle? Is she moving well? If she's fit and 100% fit, I think she goes through. And I think it'll be Sabalenka, Rybakina, Swiatek, Gauff in the semifinals. In terms of a winner, if I was to pick a winner of the whole tournament, and I've got a bit boring, by the way, with my semi-final predictions, but we haven't seen many number ones win the tournament. But Sabalenka's been very, very consistent all year. She's made a lot of quarterfinals, a lot of semi-finals. She's won some tournaments, of course, as well, including a marquee Grand Slam at the Australian Open. I'm going to go... You could say boring, but I think it's actually pretty bold to go for Sabalenka as the number one seed to win, because that hasn't been a common trend in the WTA Finals. I'm going to go for Sabalenka. I know a lot of people will go for Swiatek. I've seen a lot of people go for Swiatek, and I can understand why. But I just have a feeling that Sabalenka, this is almost her moment to shine in the sense that she's coming into this. She is the world number one. In the year-end tournament, in the big marquee year-end tournament. And I think she looks happy. She looks hungry. I think she's going to enjoy it as well. So, yeah, I'm going to go for Sabalenka. I'm going to go for Sabalenka to do it. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. We will be doing match previews. We'll be doing watch-alongs, all sorts for this tournament. It's the biggest, it's the last big WTA tournament of the year. I'm very much looking forward to it. I think there's going to be some cracking matches, honestly. So cannot wait to get stuck into it. Guys, thank you so much. Remember that like button. Do subscribe if you're new, and do leave a rating or review if you're listening on a podcast platform. We'll see you very, very soon. Thank you very much.